So we did a lot of research, and I was really surprised to find out that middle school kids have brains that are as thirsty, as willing to take in information as toddlers. So this is the time to start introducing all kinds of things. And I've read the research, and it just became fascinated by it.
Welcome back to the OpenEd podcast. I'm your sometimes host, Ella, and today I'm joined by Jean Eddy. Jean, can we please open up with you explaining exactly what your story is? How did you get into education? Because I think this is so fascinating.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I would have to say that I got into education by a wonderful, it's happenstance, really. I was someone who in high school had absolutely no direction. I did well in high school, but didn't really have direction. So I didn't go to college immediately after high school because I couldn't figure out what it was I wanted to do or why I would want to go to college. And ended up finally realizing that I better do something because I wasn't happy with what my options were as a high school graduate. I ended up blessedly going to a community college, and I would have to say, I can't say enough about community colleges. I met with people there who were interested in me. I particularly met a faculty member who was interested in me and wanted to help me kind of get through what I needed to get through. And he was the person who actually offered me my very first job after I got my associate's degree, working for him in a registrar's office in a college. And then I went to school, part-time nights, et cetera, getting my bachelor's degree, et cetera, after that. But from the time that I walked into that college, I was working with students of all types. And I really got a flavor for what people were up against. You know, I wasn't the only one that really didn't know what I wanted to do. And frankly, I fell into the job that I had. You know, this was not anybody who said, oh, okay, you would be good at this. This was, I fell into it because someone thought I was gifted enough to be able to get into this role and be able to do it. And I found over the years working with kids in those situations, and that was my first college. I worked for a few, but I found that in every single college I was in, the same young people were having the same issues, and they needed someone or something to help them figure out what their why was. You know, why were they going to do this? And how could they get it?
Very fascinating. As you were going through this, did you stumble upon anything like in the early years that would have made a difference?
Online, yeah, I think so. I mean, I wish that there had been some kind of an opportunity for me to go exploring, to really understand what my interests were in a very safe space. And it's really important to say safe space because so many kids are in school right now. They immediately turn off. I'll pick on girls because I am one. You're one. Young women, really, if they have any kind of difficulty at all in math or science, they kind of immediately pull back and say, oh, well, okay, I'm not good for this anyway. Girls don't do this. When, if they had been given an opportunity to go exploring on their own and try to figure it out, it would have been a much better test. And I've worked with young women who, in high schools and in middle schools that we've given grants to, when they've had an opportunity to go exploring and do things like in computer science or in math, and they're terrific at it. But they wouldn't have known that if someone hadn't said, okay, fine, no pressure, go out and look and do this.
I love this. What is the difference between, say, this approach that you are championing and I've seen this movement toward career readiness, right? And career preparation. And like in some ways it's good, but in some ways it just adds stress, right? And so you said in this safe environment. So what is the difference between like a career ready approach where it's just like, okay, like maybe you're going to be a lawyer, maybe you're going to be a doctor, like let's push this on you to decide what you're going to be versus this exploration, this interest-based learning kind of an approach?
Well, I think there are two avenues. You know, the first is we have to acknowledge the facts that we are living in a digital world. And kids today, some younger than middle schoolers, but certainly middle schoolers, they all have mobile devices. It's an opportunity to give them a chance to go out and look at a whole lot of things without the pressure of being in an environment where someone is judging them on what they like, what they don't like, how far they get or not. And I think what we learned a lot from, I mean, ASA does this. We have free digital tools that kids can use to go out and do this kind of exploring. There's a lot of talk about kids and cell phones and all of those things. And I heartily agree that being on a cell phone 4 or 5 hours a day is not healthy. So to me, being able to give a kid an opportunity to do something that's fun, but also educational is a win-win. And it's a very, very safe space for some young person to go out and explore and start to try things and figure them out. The other thing is, and I've watched teachers do this brilliantly, there are a lot of teachers who will be talking about various things in classes, various subjects that they teach, and they will give like a hybrid lesson. They will tell kids to go off, try something, do it digitally, and let them go at their own pace and be able to come back and ask questions and figure it out. To me, that's magic. That's just magic. And more kids can find their comfort space there and actually be able to do that. I was sitting in a classroom in California 2 or 3 years ago now, in a school system that totally believes in career-related education. And by that, I mean, you're sitting in a math class and suddenly you see the relevance of what you could use that math for. I don't know how you experienced this, but I will tell you I did, and I know my children did. My kids would come home from school and say, I'm not going to use this. Why am I taking this class? But I was sitting in this class in California and saw how a teacher was showing the relevance of parts of algebra and how it could be used in everyday life. And the one thing I do know with working so many kids these years, they're looking for relevance. They want to understand, what does it mean to me? Why is it important in my life?
It's true. It's very fascinating. That was a very similar experience to what I had. Your experience, how you didn't know exactly what you liked, you didn't know exactly what you were good at, and then you were all of a sudden thrust to make this big girl decision of, where am I going to school? What am I doing next? What is my life path going to be? Like, it's stifling. And it's so difficult. And like, sometimes, I mean, at least the position that I was in, I'd get to a point where like, I would convince myself, okay, I'm going to be a doctor. Like, this is the path. This makes the most sense, and everybody's going to, appreciate it, and everybody's going to approve of it. And like, I'd convince myself to go down it, but then there would always be like roadblocks or things along the way that would make me pause and question. But I never explored the interests that would ultimately lead me to where I am now, until afterwards. And it's fascinating because it's definitely harder whenever you're older, I think, to explore all of these things, because you're kind of like the quote, you're building the ship as you're flying in it. It's like you are, in your life of adulthood, you're supposed to be making decisions toward your future, and yet you still need to figure out where you're going, right?
Exactly right.
It was a very, very difficult experience, but I love what you're doing. What do you find is the most common pushback against, the causes that you're championing?
I think that there are stereotypes out there. We live in a society in many parts of the United States where, it's a college for all mentality.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't go to college, there's some kind of stigma associated with that. And in fact, in the research that we've done over the years, parents feel as though if they don't get their kids to college, that they've failed. Kids feel as though if they don't go to college, that they've failed their parents. It's like this vicious cycle thing that's going on. And it doesn't have to be an either or. So many young people can do this exploration and decide even to do some kind of career-focused educational path, whether it's a certificate or some training program or whatever it may happen to be. That doesn't stop them from thinking about college later on. In fact, an awful lot of young people do. But to be able to give people the latitude and the freedom to go out and try jobs that really kind of make them feel, fabulous. I mean, there's this one woman who wanted to be, she wanted to go into aviation. Her parents were like freaked out by it, but she definitely wanted to go. and they were looking at college and they were trying to figure out how to pay for it and all of the above. And this young woman went out, did the research, and found that she could find an aviation school that would get her where she needed to go at that time, and is highly successful today. And there were many, many young people like that. I shouldn't just talk about women. I'm biased, but that it's for everybody. It's for every young person. I talk about plumbers all the time. Plumbers have real insights into so many things. All of us think about, oh, well, this is the person I'm calling because I have a problem in my bathroom. No, not necessarily. And they have to know so many things to be effective at what they do. They also have to learn how to be their own boss. They have to, learn how to run a business, all of those kinds of things. So they may end up getting the technical skills they need to be able to be a plumber, but then along the way, they have to pick up all these other things, which they may or may not get in college, but they're certainly going to get more training. That's the big deal. It's about more training. Our society requires more training. It doesn't necessarily have to be in a college.
Very fascinating.
And I say that with all due respect to colleges. I worked in them for years. So
I might ask a question about your experience in the colleges at some point, but so our audience, like our families inside of the program and that listen to the podcast, they're mostly homeschoolers or they are very comfortable with building their own experiences, right? They're very, very comfortable with these ideas that you're promoting about, like, sharing things with your kids early and exposing them to all these things that they could be interested in. I wonder if you have a perspective on motivation. So something that's really hard with certain kids is just getting them motivated to explore new interests, right? Whenever they're really young, they're very excited. But then as they get older and you're like, hey, like, here's a design course. Do you want to try it? Sometimes if it's like a teenager, they'll be dragging their feet a little bit, even though it's good for them. So how would you recommend approaching sharing all these things that could be very interesting to a kid, but with the possible pushback of like that motivation piece?
It has to be fun. What school is supposed to be and should be is fun. And from fun, it's going to become learn. It's going to take on learning. I will dare say, and think about it, the times that you've learned the best stuff in your life, you find fun doing it. So, parents really need to, and that's what's beautiful about parents who homeschool, because they are spending that one-on-one time with their kids. They know what makes them happy. They know what makes, gives them fun. Lean into that. Give more opportunities for that. The issue that I see that happens is because of the structure of school systems, that fun is not the primary purpose. And what our school systems were designed, that's not what they were for. It was really to provide a babysitting service so that people could go to work. That's what it was. But if you can put the fun back, and a lot of teachers are doing that now, then kids would be able to lean in more, I would say, aggressively, because they're having fun doing it.
I like that. Do you have an example of like a teacher or a parent or somebody bringing in some sort of like interest-based something that is also an extremely fun approach?
Yeah. There was a group of young women in Boston, Massachusetts, who, this was not a parent, but this was a teacher. And he had a bunch of young girls who were very interested in the space program. And so he decided that he was going to kind of, I don't know what you want to call it, create this cadre of young women who were going to be able to go out and start to basically build something that would be more like a space station. So, and he went so far as he had a connection with someone at NASA. He introduced these young women to this scientist at NASA, and they began talking back and forth about what the possibilities were. Those young gals have subsequently, since they started that endeavor, they have been mentoring subsequent groups of girls to be able to go and do this. I keep talking about girls. I have to come up with an example about young men. But anyway, they are doing this. If you talk to any one of them, they're like beaming. Because why? because this was the coolest thing and the most fun thing they've done in forever. And there are plenty of people, plenty of teachers who do that, and parents who provide those kinds of opportunities for young people. Project Lead the Way. You familiar with Project Lead the Way?
I think so.
Okay. Lots of parents get involved in Project Lead the Way. I have an employee who is very, very engaged with Project Lead the Way, and her son has been an active participant in that from the time he was quite young. And he is now at a college in New York, where he is specializing in very high-tech opportunities in space. So it is possible in all those arenas. If you can create a fun environment and lean in, you can end up getting an enormously wonderful experience for your son or daughter.
I love this. You have mentioned in the past that it's important to start early exploring interests. Why is that?
When we first started down this road, I was trying to look for the appropriate time that you could introduce career education and you had some kind of an opportunity to have it connect with a young person. And because I knew that what we were trying, which was early college, high school, it wasn't doing it. Because we still had kids making decisions that they regretted after the fact. And we knew that because of kids who had borrowed money to go to school and then found that at the end of the day, they were having real difficulties because we talked to a lot of kids. So we did a lot of research. And I was really surprised to find out that middle school kids have brains that are as thirsty, as willing to take in information as toddlers. That their brains are just so observant at that point in time that this is the time to start introducing all kinds of things. And I've talked to faculty members at UVA and NYU, and I've read the research, and it just became fascinated by it, which is why we focused on middle school. And if you think about it, getting very pragmatic here, kids are in middle school, they are just about to go into high school, and they're going to be asked to pick classes for high school. Now, what are you going to pick for classes in high school if you have no idea what it is you're interested in? But if you do know what you're interested in, then you've got a shot of being able to take courses that you can actually see if these things are of interest to you and if you're good at them, and then be able to kind of come up with a plan for once you graduate. Like, is it college? Is it training? Is it, what is it? But you can't do that if nobody has exposed you to it at a time when you're willing to hear it. And if you think about it, and I can attest to this with my own kids, a young person who was like 13 years old is not totally wedded to what his friends say. But wait until he's 15 and the story changes. But this is an opportunity. They're wide open. They're willing to explore, want to explore, and want to try things out.
I wonder what this has to do with like sense of self, like how it helps develop a sense of self of a kid too.
I think that's got everything to do with sense of self.
Very interesting. So, I'm curious to hear your perspective on this, right? Like, people would push back that, at least adults would, right? That you don't have to love the work that you're doing, right? That you should like it, that there should be some overlap there. What is your perspective on that? Why is it so valuable that we actually find what kids are interested in?
We work a very long time in this life, a very long time. And before I even got into this work as deeply as I've been in it, I always said to both of my children, you've got to figure out what it is you love to do, because you're going to be doing it for a very long time. The people I talked to, and the kids, particularly the kids who got into an awful lot of debt when they were at college and then didn't feel as though they had the best outcome, would say to me things like, I was in school all these years, became a lawyer, and I found out within 6 months I've hated it.
I know somebody
I was in my doctor's office 2 days ago and was meeting with a young professional in that office. And he talked about the fact that he was an engineer. He'd gone to school for being in engineering, went through the whole thing, and guess what? He hated it. He's now a nurse practitioner. It's really much better for all concerned if you know that there is something that you want to really dedicate your life to, that you really want to, because I don't believe that most people just work for a paycheck. I don't believe that. There's got to be some reward in it someplace. You've got to do it for a long time. For heaven's sake, be happy while you're doing it.
Yeah, I've recently come to believe, because so I've been exposed to some people that have found their passions very early and who have pursued it. And as young people, like, it's fascinating because it doesn't take away the struggles of adulthood, or it doesn't make it easier, right? Like, adulthood is hard, but it makes it worth it. Like, you have
Yeah.
things along the way that you enjoy, and like those little bits of enjoyment are actually extremely valuable. Like, they are extremely important in you being satisfied with your life, just in general. Um, and it's actually very interesting because, like, whenever you approach the human as like this whole, right? And the goal is to create this enriching life, right? A part of your life as big as work, if you can make it enriching, it changes everything.
Mm-hmm. It absolutely does. It absolutely does. And it shows in everything you do.
How has your work shown in everything you do?
I would have to say that for the people who know me, whether it's professionally or personally, um, I lived for this stuff. This is just, you talk about paying things forward or giving back. There is so much joy in my life in being able to help young people get to the place where they can be happy and fulfilled, etc. I think my first role in this life that I would say that I am, you know, most happy with, most proud of is being a mom. And in many respects, I would say that my focus and my feeling towards this is very much like being a mom. I want to help kids get to where they can be. I want them to get to their best selves. I want them to have the best possible future that they could possibly have. And that's every kid, whether that kid is in the middle of the country, whether they're in Appalachia, whether they're in California, wherever they happen to be. We owe it to this country and to our young people to make that happen.
I love that. There's this book called The Second Mountain. I don't know if you've heard about it, but
I
or
haven't.
it's this I forget, he's a researcher and a journalist, and he basically writes that most people go through this experience of having two mountains that they climb in their lifetime. The first one is for like possession, or like to win, right? Like, I want to get to the top of this mountain because there's something there that I want. And then once they get there, they realize that that wasn't what they were searching for in the beginning. So then they go for this second mountain, which is more associated with a why, like a mission. And it's very interesting because I think when something aligns with you deeply, usually there's a why tied to it behind everything else.
So think about this. Think about the big win here. The big win is that I've been trying to work on this for a number of years and work with young people. And, I didn't start out as, a CEO of anything. I started off as an assistant registrar at a little college. But as I worked through all of these things and had it matter to me and worked harder, I actually did go up that mountain personally, professionally, but also I was able to fulfill the things I wanted to fulfill. It meant an awful lot to me. So I guess, I'm blessed because I had the win-win. And that's what I want for everybody else. That's what I want for our kids to see.
It seems like there's also this difference between like skill interests and like mission interests, right? So a mission interest would be, for example, like open education, right? So I deeply believe in this category of open education. I deeply believe in what we are doing to increase everybody's optionality basically inside of education. But then the skill part is like, I'm also interested in marketing, which makes this dual fit of like, oh, I'm marketing for a company that does this thing, really strong fit for me. Um, how do you like as a young person figure out that overlap between what are the skills that I need to then also match with the industry or like the why that I'm pursuing?
What's neat about really good career exploration in work-based learning, I would say, is that when you do a career search and you are talking about an area of interest, you are not talking about I want to be an accountant. You're talking about that you want to work with numbers, or you want to work with puzzles, or you want to work with something like that. And then good career exploration, and I think we do this really well, shows young people all of the things that they can do in that space. And it can be a lot. And then the beauty of work-based learning is to say, okay, let's go try some of this stuff. Let's go see how this does. So that, I would say, in talking about marketing, and they are saying we have a full marketing department. Those young folks, every single person in the marketing department absolutely has this fire in their belly and the creativity about, what they want to do and how they want to tell the story and how they get the word out, etc. But what drives it is the mission. It's about what we do every day and how satisfying it is and how rewarding it is to see their talent be able to translate into an impact on the mission. And you can have both if you use tools that are available to have kids start to explore and then move into the experiment stage, like work-based learning, hands-on, shadowing, apprenticeships, internships, those kinds of things. It can happen. It's just a different way of approaching how we help our kids learn. And it's not the regimented, go into school by 8:20, get out by 3:20. It's not that. You have this many classes, this many bells go up. It's nothing.
What do you think are the most important parts of education? It seems like hands-on learning and fun, of course, but are very important to you. Would you say that there's any other piece that's like critical?
Well, I think that certainly there has to be a way to be able to provide the basic things that people need. We all need to know how to read. We all need to use math. We all need to have a feeling of the world, etc. But how those things are delivered is really what's important. So I don't want to say, oh no, you don't need traditional learning. Of course you do. You need those courses. You need the basics to be able to move forward. It's how it's delivered, and therein lies the difference.
Interesting. You've emphasized quite a bit, like the way that we do career exploration, the way that we do interests, exposing kids to their interests. How would you recommend homeschool parents think about it? Like, probably not much different, but since they're the ones directing the education, right? Like, what can they do today?
Parents who homeschool have they're already so in tune because they are homeschooling. But this is the kind of thing where if I'm homeschooling my son and he was showing the least bit of interest in science and he was really leaning into that, I would be doing field trips. I would be out, at ponds and streams and talking about wildlife. I would be at the Boston Science Museum. I would be doing anything that would really be pushing on what could possibly be. And that's the beauty of being homeschooling kids. That's what's so great about it.
Interesting. It's like it's very simple, actually, these ideas that you're presenting, but they're very fascinating because it's like it's connecting kids to the world around them, right? So like
Yeah.
you saying take him to a stream, right? Or you saying take this kid to a museum. Um it is in a way fostering the natural curiosity of a human, right? And the natural
Yes.
curiosity of a human with the world around them, right? Like we are naturally, if we start like looking into it, right? Like anytime that somebody challenges me to Google something crazy like, oh, how does a tree do this? Or like, how does this actually happen? Once you start looking into it, it's like endlessly fascinating, no matter what it is.
Mhm.
And so it kind of is, how do you unlock that inside of your kid? That endlessly fascinated part of this kid, right? That is so ready and willing to ask questions and kind of dig a little deeper and say, whoa, that's like so cool. How is that even possible? Um, and so it sounds like that's what you're doing. Like, how can you, knowing what you know about your kid and knowing what you know about the things that are not working, how can you try and get them just fascinated with anything about this subject?
Exactly. That's exactly what needs to happen. And again, there are tools out there. There are digital tools. We have them. There are others that are out there where parents can use those to help their son or daughter be able to do some of this stuff on their own, to go out and experiment on their own. Ours are free. So I'm going to give a big plug to that. Ours are free. But kids can go out and try a whole bunch of things on our platforms.
What are a couple of things?
One of the things that we have is something called, let's talk about FutureScape first. So FutureScape not only has an assessment tool that kind of has kids do games, puzzles, etc., and helps kids figure out, kind of what they're good at, what their interests are. And so then we show them all kinds of opportunities for how that can play out. I'll pick on someone who says they really into sports. And so the first thing that may come to a young man's mind is, I want to be an NBA player. But suddenly he sees all these opportunities where he can work at on staff, he can be an assistant, he can do the logistics, he can do all these things. And suddenly there's this whole new world out there for him. We have another platform that allows a young person to be able to go out and try internships and do a day in the life. Some of these internships are virtual, but again, it allows them to go and try it. So there are all kinds of ways for particularly homeschool parents introduce their young children, their sons or daughters, into opportunities that they may not have.
Interesting. And then, yeah, I love this. I love this so much. Here's a funny story. I don't know. I think you'll enjoy this. So, just aligned with, um, once you get kids fascinated by something, then they start contributing very differently. So, my littlest brother, he's now 17. He's going off to college. He made that decision very consciously, just because he knew what he wanted to do. He had all of the opportunity ahead of time to explore his interests. Found out that he
Mhm.
really, really enjoyed engineering. Anyways, so he made that conscious decision, and it's been really great. But he's going off to college, and he's gotten very interested in coffee, right? So he has a side passion for coffee beans and how to make coffee and how to roast things. And he applied for his first job at a coffee shop because he thought that would highly align with his interests. Um, and because he is an engineer as well in his mind, he started getting his training and realized that this coffee shop approaches things backwards. Like, they don't roast the beans the way that he knows they should. They don't store things the way that they should. They don't, like, all of these things that he's like, "Oh my gosh, this is not the way that it's supposed to be done." And he has decided, because of that, first off, he obviously wants to tell them and help them out. But also, like, he wants to do things very, very differently. And so it is very interesting how, like, once you spark a passion in a kid, or like once you get them really fascinated about something, they want to improve things. Like, they don't want to
Yeah.
do things the same way that they've been done if there's a better way. And so, because he's an engineer and because he has this passion, like, he wants to come into this coffee shop and make everything better and change it. And like, it's just really fascinating, because I think that is the beauty of introducing kids to things that they're interested in and like actually want to be a part of, and like actually have an opinion on. I'm curious your thought on this. Like, some naysayers might bring up the fact that teens have all these ideas of the things that they'd change and the way that they'd make the world a better place and all these things, but then you become an adult and people tell you no all the time, right? Why is it still a good thing that these kids have this almost like passion and desire and like keep on pushing for that future that could possibly be better? Like, why do we want to create kids like that?
Because they can win. Life is not about a closed door everywhere you go. You can win. You can win it all. And the one thing about this particular generation of young people that is going through school between high school and college right now, they are the most altruistic bunch that has come through in eons. The world needs them. We need that right now. And I would say that with the intelligence and with the opportunity and with that kind of altruism, they can win. The biggest deal is going to be, how do you keep pushing? Yes, because yes, the world isn't necessarily always kind. But I would dare say, if you find your niche and you can push forward, you can win.
It's fascinating as the world changes, especially now, right? The opportunities that are available today may not be available in the future, and the opportunities that will be available in the future might not even be a thought today. How do parents
Yep.
prepare their kids for a world like that?
Kids have got to be adaptable. They have to learn how to think, and they have to learn how to pivot. They have to be able to take what it is that they know and apply it to what is in front of them. I think your brother is a perfect example of that. Here he is with this engineering mind. He goes into this coffee shop and he immediately goes to, this is how it would have to happen. Well, let's just say he's doing his engineering job, all else fails, for whatever reason he loses it, and he ends up in a coffee shop. And he finds out that they're not doing it the right way. Your brother has the skills to be able to turn something around and make it better. And there are an awful lot of people who have developed these kinds of skills, these durable skills, how to think, how to problem solve, how to pull things apart and pull them back together again, that serves them well. They're adaptable. And all kids today, everybody needs, and that's what parents can do to help their kids be able to do that.
And durable skills are created through like real experiences.
Real experiences and opportunities. This is not, it's helping a young person figure out how to problem solve. Let them figure things out. We all have a tendency as parents to want to fix it, but sometimes that's not the right course of action. Sometimes the right course of action is to let your son or daughter work through what is the best answer for them. I'm not saying not help, not guide, but don't hand it. Let your son or daughter kind of figure, help them get to a place where they can figure it out. Digital fluency is absolutely something that is going to be, everybody's going to need that. Every kid needs to have that. They need to know how to analyze things, to be able to say, this is good, but this is better, kind of thing. How do you compare things, and how do you get them to actually be able to stack up against one another? Those are the kinds of things that are going to work through. People talk a lot about how they are worried, very, very worried about AI. I would say to you that we have to develop a society of young people who, A, are not afraid of it, and B, know what to do with it. So it's not a case of we're all going to be replaced by AI. It's who are the people who can maximize what AI can bring to the party. And those are the people who are going to be valuable. Again, that's another way to be adaptable in this situation.
It's interesting. I'm curious to hear your perspective on hobbies.
I shouldn't say everybody needs one, because I don't believe that. But I do believe that it's an area of expression that a young person can only grow from. It doesn't mean you have to have one, but it would also be something that, and I would dare say this, oftentimes when someone is trying to figure out what it is they love to do, it develops into a hobby because they go out and do it all the time. What's interesting about it is to see how that hobby could inform what might be the next thing. But I would dare say, I'm not sure, let's say it this way, I'm not sure if we have encouraged hobbies the way we could have in order to have the kind of, the outcomes that could actually evolve from them.
Do you think it's because we're always stressed about the way we're spending our time?
I think that I don't know how programmed you were as a child, but I think parents today highly program their children. There's soccer on Tuesdays and there's this on Wednesdays, and we have to get to this on whenever, never, never, never. And I think sometimes over programming does not allow for the kind of exploration or hobbies or, really getting involved in things that young people could do.
Hmm. When you've talked about, like, letting kids follow their interests, does that require, like, a lot of not lag time, but, just, like, unstructured time in order for them to do it properly?
I think it requires some downtime for a young person. They have to certainly have the space to be able to do that. And, whether that's within school day, depending upon the teacher, depending upon the school district, or if it's something that's at home, there needs to be time allowed to be able to do that for absolutely sure.
Interesting. Yeah, I was slightly programmed. My parents had I'm one of 4, and so there were a lot of us, and so, like, my mom and dad were not always the best at having, like, 100 million things to do, which is good. Like, it was 1 kid is doing this, so that is our bandwidth, or, like, 2 kids are doing this, so that's it. Um, so that was good because then it created a constraint for me at least to have a lot of time where, like, I was just exploring and kind of, like, doing my own thing. Um,
Mhm.
Albeit most of the time I was wasting my time, but there were times whenever I used it valuably. Um, how do you know as a parent when time is valuably spent versus not valuably spent as a kid? And should you push for quote unquote valuable time spent, or is it just kind of like let them be kids and then also kind of, like, sprinkle in these things with it?
I think what again, kids have got kids have got enough structure. They go to school every day. They do that bit every day. I think that there needs to be, I would say, more promotion. In other words, if your young door is interested in something, I would say, again, I keep using this term, but lean into it, promote it, encourage it, see what you can do to help with it, um, and see where that leads you. I don't think we have to say, okay, I'm going to spend an hour today and go exploring. What is it you want to do? Et cetera. I don't think you need to do that. I think what needs to happen is that when a young person is starting to get a glimmer of, gee, I might like to do this and do that, give them the opportunity to be able to go and do that and the time to go and do that.
Interesting.
And with 4 kids, that would be difficult, but
Yeah.
still in all, I think it could still happen.
I've seen, this growing movement of parents and kids where, like, the parent and the kid have interactions throughout the day, but usually it's not, like, extremely deep, and usually it's kind of like the kid's on the phone a lot, um, and so sometimes parents don't even know what their kids' interests are. What conversations are valuable for knowing your kids' interests? And then if, for example, you go to a traditional school, right, and, like, most parents that are sending their kids to a traditional school, which is kind of the idea behind open education. Like, you don't if you are sending your kid to a traditional school, you can add supplementals behind it. Like, you can design your
Mhm.
kid's education even still. Um, but, like, most families that send their kids to a traditional school, whether that's a public school or private school or anything else, they are, like, mentally checking the box. Like, this is already taken care of. How do they make
Mhm.
sure that, like, they are exposing kids, um, 2 interests alongside, right? Because you don't wanna be that parent that just has, like you were saying, a back to back to back schedule and, like, you're stressing your kid out all the time. And you also don't wanna experience this world where, like, a kid doesn't even have any interests and they're on their phone a lot, and, like, that's how they're using their time now, right? Like, there is a benefit and a con to so much technology. So, like, how do you bridge that?
Well, I think there are a couple of ways to go here. The first one is traditional school systems, regular traditional school systems. You can still make changes as far as how things are delivered in those schools. And I know parents are busy. I know they are. And, I know most households, both parents are working. I know that there's an awful lot. But being involved in PTOs being involved in school committee meetings. Doesn't have to be constant, but to be able to be a voice for these are the kinds of things we hope can be integrated in school systems. More and more and more of this is happening. It's happening across the country. And because of that, there's more of an opportunity within school systems to allow kids to do that kind of exploration I was talking about, and to be able to do the testing and trying that I was talking about. I think at home, and this is going to sound very simple, but nonetheless true. This is all about having conversations. It's about having conversations about, gee, what happened in school today? Did you really like that, or didn't you like that? I was most recently, I was subjected to too much TV, and I saw back to back to back to back. You know the commercials that say the more you know? Have you seen those?
I think so, yes.
Well, I kept seeing one after another and after another. And I thought to myself, wouldn't it just be great if a parent just said something like every day, what excited you today? One of the things on this, the more you know, talks about the fact that, families who eat together, stay together. And I know that, again, with the hustle and bustle, that doesn't always happen. But usually, all of the children in the house are not seating themselves. So there's one parent who is there doing it. And wouldn't it be nice if within that period of time, that one parent said, so, just tell me, did something exciting happen today? What happened today? You would be surprised that, initially your son or daughter might look at you and say, what is this? But once they get into the rhythm, you'd be surprised.
Kids like being...
That's where it has to stop. It has to start then. What do you love to do? What are you good at?
What do you dislike?
Yeah, you got to find that out for sure.
Interesting. Yeah, I've honestly, like, the simplest conversations seem like they're the most important, like just conversations at a dinner table and in the car, and simple questions that you're just like, as a parent, kind of like filing things away. It is really difficult, though, for a parent to be an education designer today, just because, you have 2 to 3 to 4 kids, maybe 1, who knows, but like you have kids, you have work, you have family, you have like travel, you have all these things happening. And then on top of just like making sure that your kid is taken care of, it's like, how do you make sure that your kid is exploring their interests and like set up for their future? It's kind of overwhelming. So for our last question, what is the best piece of advice that you have for parents that are looking at all these things about education design and trying to figure out like the best path for their kid, but also saying to you, Jean, I am tired and I do not know how I'm going to do this all?
I would say reframe the question. Reframe the question. In other words, and I'm saying this to a parent, we all talk to our children. We all do. It's simply a case of reframing one of the questions that you are already asking your son or daughter. And trust me when I say, that level of interest pays out. It always pays out.
Dang, this has been an awesome conversation. Thank you so much for sharing all of your expertise, all the things that you've been learning throughout the years. And I would highly recommend that anybody go check out ASA. I will leave the links below. We'll also post a couple of just articles and different things alongside this podcast, so people can definitely check out your resources and all of the things that y'all offer, because it is so cool what y'all are doing.
Thank you so much.